Hello, hello. Welcome, everybody. It's so nice to see so many beautiful faces out here. Thank you so much for joining us today. As you know, this is our Women in Propane Through the Leadership Lens live podcast. And it was such a great success last year, we decided to bring it back for you guys this year. So we have some amazing guests, and I'm really excited to introduce them to you. But first and foremost, I would like to thank our sponsors, Ruby sponsors, Feral Gas and Berquist, and Sapphire sponsors, RCC, Qualpay, and Klinger. And of course, thank you to our roundtable sponsor, Feral Gas. Without our sponsors, we're not able to bring this beautiful content to you guys, so I really do appreciate your support of our programming. If you want more information, please visit our website at womeninpropane.org. We are always looking for new members. Our goal is to lift women up in our propane industry and really support from the inside out. So thank you guys again for attending and supporting our programming. Today we have with you Michelle Bemson-Magai, Vice President Corporate Affairs with Feral Gas, Allison Abbott, Communications at WLGA, Brian Richardson, Editor-in-Chief with LP Gas Magazine, and Jessica Balderston, co-owner and head support of RCC. So thank you guys so much again for attending and participating and sharing your wisdom and knowledge with us. We truly appreciate it.
Good luck. All right, here we go. But honestly, I want to start off saying everybody had anywhere to be tonight, so it's really cool to be looking at all these beautiful people in the audience here to listen to this podcast. A few weeks ago, some things came up in my life where I almost had to cancel this trip, so it means a lot to be here right now. And again, it's you guys had anywhere to be, but you spent this afternoon with us, so thank you all. Welcome to Through the Leadership Lens. It's a special one. Obviously, we're live at the Expo, second year in a row. It's awesome. Thank you for coming and participating and wanting us to come back again this year. Hopefully, we can keep coming back and doing this every single year. But this podcast is proudly sponsored by the Women in Propane Council. So thank you to the Women in Propane for allowing Bridget and I to do this. Normally on Zoom, a Zencaster podcast online, but it's a lot of fun doing it in live and with all of you here with us. We're going to talk about leadership, growth, industry involvement, community involvement, risk. So if you have any questions for these four panelists, write it down. If you watch any of our podcasts, the last segment we do is called the Whip Round. And what we do is we just ask random questions like, what do you keep in the trunk of your car? What's your favorite ice cream cone? If you wrote a book about your life, what would that title be? Bridge and I aren't going to ask questions this time. So after we get through the first round of the podcast, we're going to turn it over to all of you. So you get to ask the four of them a question, and it can be anything. Keep it appropriate, please. Except for Brian. Kanaba told me to ask him anything he wants, so he's wide open. But yeah, please write down any. So we're going to do a 20-minute whip round, and then we'll do a 10-minute Q&A. So please make notes in the back of your paper if you would like to ask them any questions. So I'm Freddie Riddler. Oh, shoot, sorry, we're not supposed to do that yet, sorry.
I mean, being in person is very nerve-wracking. So on Zoom, we just start over, so we can do it again.
Yeah.
We have one bit of housekeeping. Last year, after the podcast, after the discussion, everybody kind of stayed and did a workshop with this, but I hear there are cocktails, so I don't know that anybody's going to do that after this. So if you want to use the time during the podcast to jot some notes down, maybe somebody mentions something you're interested in following up on, this is a good guide to use. You can also use the back for your tricky whip round questions. And Chelsea is going to have a microphone in the back and give you guys a chance to answer it. And then, I almost forgot, we almost had to start over again. It's like my dogs are in the background. The Women in Propane are selling these t-shirts at the booth to support the ongoing efforts. So please, we encourage you to stop by and purchase one.
Are we ready?
All right, now we're ready.
All right. Thank you for joining us for the Through the Leadership Lens, a podcast presented by the Women in Propane Council. I am Freddie Riddler.
And I'm Bridget Kidd, and we introduced our guests already. So we have an interesting kind of dynamic here. Some guests from last year, some people who have not formally been have not participated on the podcast yet, but we're going to kick it off today. I am going to start with Allison. We would regret if we did not mention this year is the 10th year celebrating women in LP and the incredible effort that Allison and others have undertaken across the world. But when we think about the roundtable yesterday, Angela's here. I hear it was absolutely wonderful. One of the themes we kind of wanted to touch on is both mentorship. Obviously, the Women in Propane has a really unique and growing mentorship program. But then there's the difference between mentorship and coaching. So I'm wondering, Allison, if you can talk to us a little bit about how you view, from an international perspective, the value and incorporation of mentorship and/or coaching in leadership development.
Thanks, Bridget, and thank you, Freddie, and thanks, everybody. It's really lovely to be here. As Bridget said, I'm the Communications Director for the World Liquid Gas Association, and we're based in Paris. And I'm also the co-founder of the Women in LPG Global Network with my colleague, Nikki Brown, who many of you know. If I may, the Women in LPG Global Network is something we founded 10 years ago. So this is our decade. It's our first decade, and everybody should be really proud of it because Women in Propane is one of our partners, and we have 14 national chapters around the world, and these, and then I'll answer your question, and these national chapters can be anywhere from Nigeria to India to Myanmar to Colombia, Brazil, Mexico, you name it, we're there. And what's needed in Kenya is very different to what may be needed in India or the US, or Poland. So in terms of the mentorship, it's quite hard for us to set that up, because to take someone from the US to mentor somebody in South Africa is not going to be that easy. So this year we're looking at doing a slightly different take on mentorship, where we'll do like a one to several. So what we'll do is we'll pick one country. Maybe we'll start with Tanzania. That's our most recently launched national chapter, and we'll be going back down there in June, and we'll invite 6 women, and we will do a mentorship depending on what they need, because a lot of the women in Tanzania may have very different needs. They need building up. They don't have the confidence that a lot of the women here have, because they're in a really male-dominated environment. And then, depending on the success of that, we'll then move on to another country. But also, Nikki is doing a one-on-one mentorship with the leader of the Tanzania Association, because she, again, it's new for them, and they're so excited, but they feel that they need the help and the guidance. So we're starting with the one-on-one. The challenge that we had is that everybody needs something different, and we have to assess that, if that helps.
Yeah, and I'll just follow up, if you would hand that to Michelle, because I think that's probably a similar experience, right? Everybody needs to develop something a little bit different. Obviously, what's happening in Tanzania is dramatically different than what's happening in southern New Jersey, where I live. But when you're looking across an organization and a staff where there may be a single opportunity for mentorship versus, maybe your own, how has that played a role in your development of yourself, but then also those around you?
First of all, thank you. Really privileged to be here to speak today and to see all you out there. This is great. It's like a crowded house. And there's not even cocktails in this room yet. So this is great. Not yet, right? But we know it's next door. So some of you may have heard me talk about this before, and particularly when you talk about mentoring, sponsorship, coaching. Throughout my career, I didn't have a mentor. I looked for one. I kept thinking one was going to walk up to me and be like, "Hi, I'd like to be your mentor." And I would have said, "Thank you. I really would like one." And it just never happened. And so what I realized, what happened was I had a group of colleagues. And so there were 3 or 4 of us that were sort of all on the same level. And we developed that relationship. And so I wasn't able to find it in that true sort of mentor-mentee relationship, but I did have a support system, particularly in the company, where I could walk in and say, hey, how did that meeting go? How did I come across? And when you're having those conversations, and you can be really honest. So what I would say is, if you don't have a mentor, that's okay. And it really isn't that relationship where you just walk up and say, will you be my mentor? It really does, I think, come organically. But what I think you can also do now, what I'm really seeing changing, not only in the industry, but I think in the US, and I know when I just went through a career change, I actually hired a coach because I thought I needed somebody who didn't know me and who wasn't just gonna say, you're great, anything you wanna do is great. I wanted someone to say, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And so I looked at it like spending the money on myself to sort of walk through. So all of that to say, you may not find a specific mentor relationship, but you can find another relationship that I think is going to give you some of those same things.
Yeah, and that's a good segue into a question for Jess. Hey, Jess.
Hey, Fred.
Thanks for being on the podcast.
Yeah, of course.
So this leads up to a point I had written down for you. It's been, 5 years in the making. Second-gen ownership transition took over. It's not the easiest thing in the world, I'm guessing. But mentorship is a big thing. And I know that you spend quite a bit of time with a special mentor, the whole owners do. Yes. And by the way, Knowledge Exchange, www.womenandpropane.org. Knowledge Exchange, that's the mentorship program for Women in Propane. There's a plug for somebody. Anyways, so...
Matching for you.
Yes, it's really easy. Just sign up and they'll take it from there. But if you'd like to kind of talk a little bit about your mentorship that you've used the last 5 years.
I will plug Knowledge Exchange really quick too, because even if you're that mentor, you're looking to pass your knowledge on to somebody, still sign up for that, because then we'll pair you with somebody else, either outside your company or somebody that you can pass that knowledge on to. It helped me tremendously when I first started here a few years ago, and I think it's beneficial for everybody to join in. But to go back to Freddie's question, I was actually pregnant with my daughter, so it's been 6 years, and we met with a business psychologist to help us through the transition of first generation to second generation, and it's been the best thing that we ever could have done. And I remember the first time I talked to this gentleman, I cried the whole session, so being pregnant, it just stuck with my mind quite a bit. But Brian Follick, he is a business psychologist, and he helped us. First off, it's a company it's my brother, myself, and then 2 cousins. So growing up in 2 different households, we had to learn how to communicate and work with each other. It's a little bit different dynamics than just a brother-sister taking over the company. So that's how we started off our base, is having Brian Follick come in and just make sure that the second generation was all on the same page with the same goals, the same vision, the same destination that we wanted to be with as a company. And then Brian also helped us transition from first generation to second generation by forming a leadership group at our company. So we've been around for 45 years, and we have a lot of long-term employees at our company. And we didn't want second generation just to come in and take over the business. We wanted to rely on that leadership and those employees who have been here for so long, because they know the book of business, they know what we decided throughout the years, and that's just not some of the knowledge that second generation had. So we really leaned on him, and we formed a leadership team at our company, and we have all been very similar, where we rely on each other to kind of be sounding boards and bring each other up to the level that we need to be.
And Brian, talking about mentorship, and thank you for being on the podcast as well. You kind of see things as a different level. You're the media person, so you see like the 30,000-foot view looking down, right?
Right, and just thinking about mentorship, I just think about, when I started in the industry back in 2007, I think about my mentor at the time, Pat Hyland, who was the previous editor of LP Gas magazine, and I felt like he really, I kind of look at mentorship as a way to, you want to put those people in positions to learn and to succeed. And I felt like Pat did that for me, when I started in the industry. He spent a lot of time talking about the industry to me, so I learned that way. But he also put me out into the industry. I met a lot of people through him, and was really thrown into some of the assignments, for the industry with the magazine right away. So I feel like, when I think of mentorship, I think it's all about putting people in position to learn and to succeed. And that's something that I hope, that I can do and continue to do with our team and our staff.
I had the same experience with Pat when I came to PERC. He's wonderful. What about when you guys look at development opportunities, maybe outside of the structure of mentorship and or some formal relationship of a coach, where do you see opportunities and, Brian, maybe trends in the industry? Because I think organizationally some of these things become a little bit of buzzwords rather than implemented and actionable. Obviously, Jess, at your company, you have a leadership council, but what are the both formal and informal trends you're seeing and what are you implementing?
So one of the fun things that our company has started to implement in our different departments, we actually have a leadership book club that we started. So I'm very excited to be a part of that. And
what are you reading this month?
We are reading
everybody wants to know.
Leaders Eat Last by Simon. I forget his last name. I apologize. But yeah, we're really excited to start that book. And we actually stole that idea from our programmers. So our programmers started their own book club, and it's kind of spreading throughout our company. So we're looking forward to that. We meet every couple of weeks and just talk about leadership books.
Just as far as development, I think about passion for something that you do, and passion for getting better at your craft and what you do at your job. And I guess one thing for me is I try to read every day to keep my mind sharp as an editor, as a writer. So that's just something I think. When you look for developing skills, what can you do, individually to get better at your craft?
I'll speak up. One of the things that, and again, for those of you who've heard me speak before, I'm a huge Brene Brown groupie. Would follow this woman around. She absolutely, when I read her book, Dare to Lead, changed the way I thought about leadership and saw leadership as a skill. It's not something you just innately have. I think it is something that you have to work at it. But I believe in her definition of leadership, which is if you are someone who sees potential in a person or a process and you have the courage to develop that, that's a leader. And so I think when I look at this industry specifically, and even with Feral Gas, for example, so the volunteers who take their time to go to state gas association meetings and sign up for things like Women in Propane or the young professionals, that's where I see leadership, because it's not an org chart, right? It's not because you're a manager or a general manager. It's because you think, I can learn, I can contribute. And I think this industry does such a wonderful job of, whether it's at a local level or a state level or a national level, of opening up those opportunities. So whether you're someone who knows a lot about computers or propane or safety, there is a role for you to take a leadership position in this industry, and then it's like a snowball. It just gets bigger and bigger. So you don't even really need a formal program. It's already organically in the industry.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree completely. And I think it's not really a trend, but one of the things that we have as a main focus is LPG for cooking. Now, here in the global north, it's not so critical, but we do a lot of work in the global south. And we changed the structure of women at LPG so that we could bring in, part of the work that we do is go in country to places where I've been in places where they've never even seen a Western woman before. And I think we bring in LPG and we help put together what's called a community kitchen. And I've done this in Myanmar, where we can't even go to anymore. And we invite women from the below poverty line, and it's killing them to cook with wood. So our training, if you like, is to make sure they're not frightened of cooking with LPG, because that changes their lives from the word go. And it's so emotional, and you're going to talk about what we did in South Africa, and we won't cry. And I think it's so enriching, because it takes you back down to the absolute core, that we should be all you said passion, and this will not be the last time we hear the word passion this hour. We're also proud of what we do, and everyone in this room should be so passionate about our amazing product, because I've seen where it literally saves lives. And if that doesn't make this the best job in the world, then I don't know what does. And so that's it's not so much a trend, but it's one of our core principles, if you like.
Sure, an opportunity too. You guys brought something up that we were kind of secondarily wanting to discuss, but the role that risk plays in leadership, right? So I think everybody probably has a very different, level of risk you're willing to take based on what's happening in your life. Allison told us an incredible story on the podcast about going into some of these countries where the risk looks like, you've never seen a Western woman, or the true safety risk, right? Michelle has made a huge career move. Will you guys just talk a little bit about the risk and how you measure the risk and make that leap? Or maybe you don't. Maybe you say now's not the time.
There's two kinds of risk. I think there's emotional risk, which is like when you maybe think, I'm going to stop work and do something different. Or we sometimes have other risks when we go to challenging geographies. And as a blondish woman in some of the countries that we go to, but you think, you respect, it's all about respect. And I think if you respect people respect you back, and that's so important that you don't go into the Middle East wearing shorts and a little tiny top, and you respect. But that's more of that's manageable. And emotional risk, I think you're well positioned to talk about that.
I think risk is the right word to sort of talk about it. And for me personally, I was with AmeriGas for 17 years and thought I was doing a pretty good job. Thought everything was well. Why would you leave that, right? I knew I had a great team. I knew what I was doing. I loved the industry. But there were things when I remember sitting in my car and at a stoplight, and I would start daydreaming about different things. And I wasn't daydreaming about my job anymore. And that started me thinking, maybe I should be doing something else. So then I just started looking around a little bit more. And then what I would say is be open when people call you. Be open when someone suggests something to you. And you may think, oh, not a big deal. Have that conversation. Go have coffee with someone. And then have fun with it in your brain. Play around with it. Think around with it. I mean, I identified as a lawyer. I'm going to be a lawyer. I was a lawyer for AmeriGas. And then an opportunity came down my way where I'm not a lawyer anymore. And I was like, why would I do that? Why would someone leave? And I just kept thinking back to when I'm sitting at a stoplight, am I thinking about that job? And I'm not. I was thinking, wouldn't safety be really interesting to work on? Wouldn't communications be really interesting to work on? And then you start doing that. And then you do a list, right? Your pros and cons. And then that's when I thought I needed a little more help. And I went with the coach just to make sure I wasn't missing something. Because, right, like I have a family and I do have to make a living for my family. And I wanted to make sure I was making the right decision. And I knew that I wanted to stay in the industry. So that was an easier decision, but hard to leave something where you're really comfortable. And then one of my mentors, and when I was explaining that I didn't want to leave my team, that people were really important, and he said, I understand what you're saying, but what about the person that hasn't met you yet? And wouldn't you like to work with them? And probably within a week of Feral Gas being there, I met 3 women that I was like, yep, this is what he was saying to me. So, but take the risk. It is a risk, and you should think about it. But the rewards are pretty immense when you take that risk.
There's a book out right now. It's not a leadership book, but it's really good. Ina Garten's memoir is called Be Ready When the Luck Happens. I highly recommend it. Yeah, kind of echoes your sentiment. Sorry, Brian.
No, I was just going to say, I guess I relate a lot of this back to LP Gas Magazine. When I think of risk, I feel like we take a risk every day, every month, just as far as the content, that we're releasing to the industry. So I think it really is important for us as a team to really discuss, what that content looks like, consider, what the industry, how you're going to react to it, and really make those, key decisions to put the best content out there. So I feel like, risk is naturally a part of what we're doing, but again, I feel like it just comes back to teamwork and relying on everyone within your group. I guess in the other part of risk, I feel like there's always fear involved, right, when you're talking about risk, and kind of overcoming that fear to get to where you want to go. So I think that's obviously a battle in itself, but thinking about the end goal and what the reward would be, I feel is probably most important.
Yeah, I kind of echo what Brian says. I feel like the risk for me inside this industry is the level of self-doubt that you might have, meaning you might not say yes to everything to become involved, and whether it's in your own company or if it's at the industry level. And I feel like that took a lot for myself to get over and start being involved. And once you start saying yes to people, it just opens so many doors, and I've met so many people through this industry that it's just been wonderful after getting that risk of self-doubt out of my mind.
Don't say yes to Nancy Coop. I wouldn't be sitting here right now if it wasn't for her.
So Freddie said yes to Nancy, and then I said yes to Freddie. So
When I hear that, I think of Nancy.
Yes.
Thanks again for the meeting at Palm Springs.
Yep.
That's a fun segue to what I wanted to bring up next is I just got to celebrate 20 years in the industry, March. I didn't think I'd be still here, to be honest. This is such a family industry. It's so amazing. Someone told me it kind of sneaks up on you, and next thing you know, you're here forever. So I guess that's where I'm going to be right now. But leadership has definitely changed. I've seen people come and go. I've seen generational shifts take place. But I see a lot of legacy people left behind, just the stories they tell about their mentors. And like you two just talked about somebody like, well, he was my mentor as well. If you guys could all answer, this is my favorite question, but in your eyes, how has that leadership changed over the last 2 decades for myself, but just for how long you've been in the propane industry? What has been the biggest change that you saw in leaders other than the younger group coming in?
Yeah, I'll take this one really quick. I'm going to give an example just from my company. So my dad and my aunt had the mentality of put your big girl pants on and deal with it. And I feel like the leadership change that has come with the second generation is like, yeah, we probably can't say that to our employees anymore. Like, let's maybe listen and talk about mental health a little bit more with our employees too. So I feel like that has kind of shifted throughout the years of leadership change.
Yeah, I feel like, I don't see a whole lot of difference, to be honest, Freddie, but what I do see, I know you mentioned the younger generation, but obviously more women involved today in leadership positions, which is key. But no, I see a lot of consistent, strong leadership in the industry, and not a lot of change on my end.
I think probably the number one thing that I've seen in the industry and I think in the U.S. over the last, say, 10 or 15 years is authenticity. I think it really is. I see Heather shaking her head. I think COVID accelerated it. I look at having children, for example, and just the way motherhood is looked at, and the sort of the bringing your whole self to work kind of a thing. I think, and I've seen it change in men as well. But I think just across the board, being more authentic and not. I think the leadership has changed where it was molded. It's that whole executive presence. You got to be strong, and if you show any vulnerability, it's a weakness. I think that is changing in a really wonderful, positive way. And you can bring your whole self to work, particularly in this industry, which is so family-focused. I think that's probably the biggest change I've seen.
Yeah, I'd agree with you, and I think it's pre and post-COVID. I think post-COVID, I think leaders listen more. We've got a different spirit. We've talked a lot about this morning. We were talking about, even how we are able to dress. You can dress in trainers and as a woman and still look professional and still kick ass. And whereas before, I think if you'd have gone to a sort of a quite sort of posh conference in a nice suit and pair of trainers, as a woman, they'd have been, And I think there's more, people listen more, and I think and also as women, I think we have the confidence to stand up, and it comes back to what you said about emotional intelligence of the men around us and to support, but also about the fact that we grow in confidence and we listen and we're listened to.
I think there's probably an element of that risk, right, as business owners and business leaders, that if you aren't embracing change and innovation and willing to take a risk of somebody who may be different from what you normally have in that role, or a background that may be just a touch different than what you expected. I know we at PERC see people coming and going within our organization, and we're really more open to people with completely diverse backgrounds. Bringing somebody in who maybe doesn't really know anything about propane offers a totally different perspective on growth and outreach and engagement and education. And I think in the time I've been in the industry, there's a lot more of that. Willingness to look outside the industry, willingness to take a chance on someone who doesn't fit the mold of what it's been for the past 30, 40 years. So what do you guys see as next, right? When you look at those around you and that you're trying to raise up, right? Because that's what the point, right? We want to raise everybody up around us. What do you see as the next opportunity for growth or the next opportunity for the industry to raise up and continue in leadership development?
Okay, I'll say something. I think that we're so privileged to have this kind of platform. And maybe 12 years ago I was here in Atlanta when we launched Women in Propane. And it was like, wow, this is new. And so I think in when we come back in 10 years, hopefully we'll be retired on our yachts. But I think that I find that when I'll go somewhere and then 5 years later you go back and these women that you saw as quite timid women, they're being allowed to grow, and that I think is the sea change that bodies like the women around these tables can do, and everybody has a role to play.
I think one of the things we're probably going to see, because I think we're already beginning to see it now, is employees want to work somewhere where there's a purpose, right? Yes, you want to be fairly compensated. That's sort of table stakes. But I think now, I'm a Gen Z, or I'm a Gen X. I look at Gen Z, millennials, but I think they look at the fact they can work anywhere. And so if you're a company or a business leader or a business owner, what are you giving in addition to that? And I think we're going to see more and more of that, of what do companies stand for and where that's going to go as you're balancing out sort of profits. But that's probably an area where I think over the next couple of years you're going to see some shifting.
I just think there's so many resources and support out there today. Obviously, with what we're doing here, with LP Gas, we have our Rising Leaders Initiative. We're recognizing young up and coming leaders in the industry, and I know NPGA is doing that as well with the Young Professionals Council. So I see that momentum continuing to build in that direction, where we're bringing all these issues to light and recognizing young leaders, and I think that's only going to help development for the future.
Yeah, I would say I hope to see the involvement still inside of our industry. I think it has been immense over the last few years of many more companies offering their employees and their mentors to our industry to help rise it up even greater.
Perfect. I have a specific question for Brian, but I think everyone can kind of answer this. Brian, I attended the LP Gas Hall of Fame just this week, and incredible award ceremony for leaders in the industry. And one of those was Rita, and she was on our podcast, so we got to know Rita through the podcast, through the leadership lens, www.womenofpropane.org. I'm really good at plugging things. But, it's fun to, we pick leaders to be on our podcast, but you have to pick leaders to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. And I was talking to some of the LP Gas folks, and you have anonymous people that find these leaders in the industry. How do you find the leaders to pick the leaders in the industry is my question. And then for everybody else, what competencies do you look for in your own team of leaders that you build around you and your organization?
Yeah, so I did hear that podcast when Rita's was a guest, and that was a really good one. So, but yeah, as far as determining, that the next group of Hall of Famers, so there's just so much good knowledge in the industry, as we all know, right? And so I feel like, we're all very close. We have a lot of connections, and I think when it came time to, launching the Hall of Fame, we really wanted to reach out to those individuals. Felt like, we've developed some good relationships over the years, and we just said we need people who know this industry, who have the experience, and that we can rely on, because we always say at the Hall of Fame that it's not really LP Gas that selects the individuals, the Hall of Famers. It's the industry, and it's very true, because we bring everybody together in these meetings as part of this anonymous selection committee.
Can we take a little credit that we helped her get in, because she did such a great job on the podcast?
I think I'm going to give you that credit, sure. So that's pretty much it, though. I mean, I think we really underline those connections and build on that, and it's worked out really well. We really do lean on these individuals to help select the Hall of Famers.
You want to talk about a leader?
Yeah.
Our leader, and a lot of you know James Rockall, and he's the CEO, and I think we're incredibly lucky, and I think the global industry is incredibly lucky to have James at the helm, because there's only 10 of us in the World Liquid Gas Association. So I meet people at PERC, and there's like 30 of you, and I think that we're very small, and James has this fantastic open door policy, and he's very well respected. He's a brilliant orator, and I think we're very, very lucky that we've got somebody that you learn from. And that's what's so important, that respects us. It's a two-way thing. So we're really lucky. It's a fantastic industry. I think that's something that we all can take away as well.
I think when I look at leaders, or when I meet young people, or throughout my career, I think the number one characteristic that I have seen where I can see there's going to be success is curiosity. Mm-hmm. If that person is curious in that first interview, that first time you meet them, you can sort of see it. And if they're curious and they're asking questions, it almost seems like the other stuff just becomes natural to it. So if I can see curiosity, you're probably going to see a pretty good leader.
I'll also shadow the curiosity. I will say too that looking for leadership in your own company, make sure you talk to the quiet ones. They are the most surprising to you, I feel like. So get to know and ask those questions. Be curious about your own employees too, because you'll learn quite a bit just asking some of those questions to them.
Maybe they just need a mentor.
They could use a mentor too.
I could say the website again, but you know if I know.
I'm going to give a plug for the whip round questions. We're getting close to, don't forget to jot those down. So we got some eager people back there. Good. It'll be competitive. We'll also rank the best question. So no pressure.
Maybe I'll just add too to what I was saying earlier about the Hall of Fame. I know you were asking about, what we look for in those individuals too. There aren't a lot of specifics, but we always ask, from the nominations, to learn as much as we can about this individual, and what they've done to move the needle in the industry is really, I think, the phrase that we use. So it's really a combination of looking at, of course, we look at what they do within their own companies, but really what's most important is what they've done for the industry. And every time we do get a nomination, we always encourage as much information as possible to really explain what they've done, and that can be in a lot of different ways as far as what they've done for the industry. So lpgashalloffame.com is where you can nominate more individuals for the Hall of Fame. I know you gave a plug earlier.
Sponsorship for right there. See that? Next year, put LP Gas on there.
What about when you guys, one question that we always start every podcast with, and it's been a while since we had this conversation with Michelle and Allison, and we haven't really directly asked you guys, and it's the first question on your sheet. What does leadership mean to you today, and maybe how has that changed? How has your perspective on what leadership means changed? We got to start down here because we haven't ever asked you guys. Oh, you passed it.
So leadership to me isn't you're leading the company independently. You have a group of people that you will help lead, and it's not a one-person-fits-all scenario. You need multiple personalities to be able to be a leadership at your company, and that's what that means to me, is having a bunch of people to rely on, and you're in it together as a team.
I guess I kind of go back to what I said earlier about putting people in position to learn and succeed. So I definitely feel that. Also, just being present and being positive. I think with who you're working with, just always being with them. As a strong support, part of that support system as they grow and develop. So that's what I look for.
One of the things I think I've learned throughout my career now, and particularly leading teams, is when I first really started out, I wanted everyone to be crazy successful, and I wanted everyone to be promoted, and I want everyone to be really ambitious. And I remember having a lot of young mothers on my team, and they started saying, "Yes, Michelle, we want to be promoted, just not right now. Right now, I want to focus on my family. Right now, I want to do a good job. Right now, I want to learn this one thing, and I don't want to go anywhere else." And I remember feeling very frustrated and thinking I was failing as a leader because I wasn't inspiring this team to want to do more. And I think as I've gotten older and a little wiser, recognizing meet them where they are. Meet them where they are. And I think that word "yet" is so important. is that recognizing that right now you want to be a mom, you want to be a dad, you want to do charity work, you want to do, and knowing that and saying, that's great, that they are still a leader because they're speaking their voice, recognizing, again, meeting people where they are.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think you have to listen, but I also think that consistency is really important as a leader, and that's something I only have a small team, but you learn to be consistent and patience, and you need to be more patient, but you need to be consistent on a day-to-day basis, even if you've had a really bad night or you've don't feel very well. If your teams come to you for help, that you don't want that to be crabby. They need to know that you'll be consistently patient with them, and I think that's really important.
So being a leader, I always hear people say they get a lot of good advice. Sometimes advice is really good, sometimes not the best. But I'd love to hear from the four of you, if you can have a little time to think about it, but think back on one story from somebody that gave you the best piece of advice, and if you could share that with this group. Because I know a lot of people are sitting here right now going, how do I become that leader? What's the next step for me? What do I need to do? What risky thing do I need to do? Who do I need to talk to say I have more to offer? Because maybe they're the quiet one in the office that inside they can be much better, but what advice would you give them to say step into that leadership role? And maybe you could share some advice that you got to kind of help you jumpstart your career.
I think the best advice that I got in a leadership role is, what's the worst that can happen? You need to ask the question, and so what if your boss says no? Ask it again in a year, or it's just not the right time. They could be saying no for a number of reasons. Keep asking the question and get to that answer, and what's the worst that could happen?
Oh.
Just go back to Pat Highland again, at LP Gas, when I was coming up, under him, we were out at a event or trade show covering an assignment, and he would always ask me, what did you learn? And that's something that I guess I expected that question, every trip that we took, which pretty much says it all right there. We see a lot on the road, and we learn a lot, and look for developing that for the magazine as well. So I always remember that from Pat. What did you learn?
I think I'm going to say what I said in my podcast because it's still my favourite piece of advice I ever had, not just about life. And my father said to me, because I was always quite ambitious and I wanted to travel a lot, and he said, expect the unexpected and you'll be okay. And I think that's whether you're trying to ask for something, they can only say no, or whether you want to be brave about something, as long as you're prepared and expect the unexpected. That was my sort of recurrent advice.
I can't remember if I said this on the podcast or not. I'll have to go back and look at it, and I'll watch it with my 13 and 14-year-old daughters, and we'll see what they think of Mom's podcast. But the defining moment that I remember in my career was with the vice president of HR, and I said, why am I not being promoted? Why am I not, why are people not seeing me as a leader? And he looked at me like, how do you not know the answer to this? And I said, well, help me. And he said, well, we know you're good at your job. We know you're the go-to person. But what we don't know is, can you develop other go-to people? What we don't know is, can you develop a team? Because we need someone who is more than just the go-to person. And that was the aha moment for me. And then that's when I picked up Brené Brown's book, Dare to Lead, and it has been a lot more aha moments after that. But it is funny how you remember those defining moments of what just changes your thought process.
You want to do whip?
I think so. We can.
Then we're getting close.
Yeah, we're getting close.
Yeah.
Anybody have any questions before we jump into the whip round? Thank you, by the way, for the discussion. All right, whip round. Who's got questions for the four panelists? Fire away, Paula. I already knew you were going to raise your hand. I was saying that before she put her hand up. What did you believe as a child that is absolutely hilarious right now?
What did you believe as a kid that maybe wasn't true, but now you think about it and you're like, I can't believe I believed that. It was hilarious.
Well, be careful. Don't say Santa Claus isn't real, because they still might believe in that.
Is there any kids here? So my dad raised llamas and wallabies growing up, and I always thought that was normal, and I realized very quickly that that's not normal to have wallabies and llamas in your backyard.
this is pretty random, but I was in a bowling league when I was in 5th or 6th grade, and I had 5 holes for my fingers in the bowling ball, and I thought that was normal, yeah. So it's kind of random.
I don't know if this answers your question specifically, but what I thought of when you said it is my mom would come up to me and she would say, Michelle, I think you're lying. I can read it on your forehead. And so I would come up to her and be like, I did my homework. And she's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I did my homework. And so I immediately thought of that when you asked that question.
Oh, I can't beat any of those, actually. I really like horses, and I thought that my little, I had one of those, what do you call them, the little hobby horses, and I thought it was real. And They are real.
Right.
Another question?
I will ask. We had this yesterday in the leadership forum. What is your superpower?
What is it, or what would we like it to be? I can read people's foreheads. Kaboom.
I think one of the things that I've learned over time people have said is I'm a good collaborator. And I like being a part of a team. I don't like making decisions by myself, and I really sort of like that process. And when I see it in other people, I gravitate towards them. So I would like to be invisible, but if that's not the thing, I would go with collaborator.
And I'd like to be a little taller, so. But no, I would say, I feel like I'm a pretty positive person, and I try to use that, to my advantage in what we do every day, in the office and in my personal life. So I just try to stay positive, when adversity comes.
For myself, I'd say my level of empathy is fairly high. Freddie and I both have this, so it's kind of hard working on the same team a lot, where we will both walk into a meeting room and you just feel the energy. And
We don't cry.
Yes,
Sometimes we might, but not all the time.
Yeah, but it's nice to get that feeling of the energy, because then you kind of can prepare yourself for that meeting or whatever it is. It kind of gives you a heads up on reading the room a little bit.
While we're waiting, I'm going to ask a question. I really like this question a lot, and I was kind of hoping there'd be a pause for me to talk. I like the question of, if you could go back to your 16-year-old self, what advice would you give? And I know you two have done that question, but they haven't. But if you just want to answer that question again, because I think that's so powerful, because as a 16-year-old, we thought we ruled everything, and we thought we had it all figured out. But now sitting here, I didn't at 16.
I'd say for myself, I would tell my 16-year-old self to ask the questions and really listen to people's answers, because you can pick a lot up from listening and being able to relate to that person. So I wish I did that a lot more at 16 and listened to my parents a little bit more.
I would just say, to broaden your horizons and keep that in mind. Don't get stuck on following one path. There might be a lot of other opportunities out there. When I was young, I wanted to be a sports writer for a newspaper, and I was able to do that. Went to school for journalism and wrote sports for several years. But then opportunity came open in the propane industry, and I wouldn't change a thing. It's just been, the last 17, 18 years that I've been in the industry, just been amazing. Like Freddie talked about it being a family. And I would have never imagined, that I would end up in the propane industry, thinking about being a sports writer early on. So, yeah, just, make sure you keep everything in mind as you get older.
I would say if I could, I can't remember what I said on the podcast, but if I could go back to my 16-year-old self, I would tell her it's going to be okay. That it may be a different path, there's really no wrong answer, but that thinking you're going to make a mistake probably prevented me from having more fun. And trying different things, because I was really afraid of making a mistake.
I was going to say exactly the same thing. It's going to be all right. And you might want to go that way, but try going that way, because it's going to be okay.
So I have a question. How do you convince yourself that this might fail, but I'm going to proceed anyways? because I know I've done that a few times, mostly good, sometimes not so good. But, just your 16-year-old self saying it's okay to make a mistake, you'll get through it. Like, what would you tell yourself? What would you tell the people that are in here, or if they're listening to this later on? What advice would you give to someone that has something that they want to proceed doing, but they're really afraid to take that step?
It might fail, but if you don't go for it, you'll never know. And if it fails and you've done the best you can possibly do, that is a learning curve. But it probably won't fail if you do the best that you can do.
I would go back to what I was saying before, just about fear, and risk. I mean, just overcome that fear. It's not easy, but what's on the other end might be really worth it, and you won't know unless you try.
Be prepared. I mean, I'm a type A person. When I'm nervous about something, I will over-prepare. I don't think you actually can over-prepare. You're just maybe wasting some time. But if you're nervous about that, my way of dealing with it is just prepare.
Yeah, I'll mimic that as well, is over-prepare for sure. Don't just lob spaghetti at the wall. Be prepared quite a bit. And being able to do that kind of goes a long way.
Do we have any questions? I'm going to ask one if we don't.
Well, I would like to pose a question to the panel, and because I have something I want to say, and it's controversial. So I'm going to.
Here we go.
It just turned into a therapy session. Get comfy.
Okay. What was the worst piece of advice that you got?
The worst piece of advice? Yeah, go marry him.
Who wants to follow that one?
I can't top that.
Same.
It got hot in here.
I told you it was going to be controversial. Okay, so I'm interested to hear how this room thinks about this. I think the worst piece of advice that I received was fake it till you make it. All right, raise your hand if you think that's a bad piece of advice. Yep. And yet we all do it. And the reason why I think it is a really bad piece of advice, and I understand what the theory behind it is, don't let fear stop you, right? You got to get out in front of it. But what I think it does is and women I think really struggle with this, it prevents you from saying, I don't know something. It prevents you cannot be authentic if you're faking it. You cannot, and again, some of you have heard me say, I ran from math, I don't like finance, it scares me, Excel spreadsheets scare me, and I just kept going along, and I got to a point in my career where I'm like, I fundamentally don't understand how we make money. That is a problem. And then I was too embarrassed to raise my hand and say, I don't understand how we make money, can somebody please teach me? And then luckily I finally got the courage and said, I need to learn this, and I wish 20 years ago, someone had said, that's ridiculous, let me do something. And so I think faking it till you're making it is just the worst advice anyone ever gave me. And I think we struggle with it all the time, to stand up and say, I don't know something, can you help me? So that's why I went a little controversial. But I was very pleased to see that all of you think that's bad advice and not good advice.
It's taken a long time of repeated question asking to finally get somebody to say, here, let me give you an answer, let me show you. Probably only in the last 3 years of my career, and that came with acquisition. So
keep asking the questions, and if you get an answer you don't like, ask someone else, and move on, because sometimes you're not going to get the right answer.
I'll add to Michelle what you were the path you're going down with this question. What do you wish women did more of in our industry?
I wish women didn't wait to be tapped to say yes to an experience. I think women, I'm guilty of it just as much as anyone else. I think women, again, more than men, and I don't know why. But where I've seen it, for example, is I remember putting an ad out for an HR lawyer. That's what I was trying to hire. I wanted a lawyer who specialized in HR. And every resume I got from a woman had at least 9 of the characteristics that were listed in the job ad. And every one that I got from male, there was one who was like, I'm not even a lawyer, but I do HR. I'm like, you're not even qualified for the position. Or I'm an SEC lawyer. And it just amazed me that the resumes I got from men versus women, and I think it is still where women like to be tapped, and I think it gets back to your comment about talk to the quiet ones. That's where you need to tap them, and I wish that would change a little bit more, where women in this industry were feeling, and again, that's not even just this industry, this is across the board, but if women were being a little more assertive about raising their hand, even if you never feel ready, right? I wasn't ready to have children, but you just do it. But I wish there was more of that we would see.
Definitely. I think it was Sheryl Sandberg who said that if a woman who is assertive, she's called bossy. And if a man is assertive, he's a great leader. And I think that we still see it, that we're different, we're wired differently, but we shouldn't be afraid to put our heads above the parapet and say, I can do that, I can apply for that, because we can. But it is something, there's a question, is it because we're wired that way, or is it because we naturally are frightened of being told no? But I think that absolutely putting your head above the parapet, not being afraid when the answer comes back if it might be no.
This is just something I thought of. I just got an email within the last week from a propane marketer just letting us know that they have 3 female bobtail drivers, and they thought that was worth a story in the magazine, all at one company, and I think that's really positive, and looking forward to telling that story in the magazine. Just thought of it now.
It probably goes back to that willingness to take a risk too. Like, am I the right person? Is this the right role? Is that risk and making yourself that vulnerable, which is also something we talk a lot about on the podcast, is it worth it in the end? Because I'm kind of okay where I'm at, but that over there looks a little bit nice, and am I going to embarrass myself? And, what's the response going to be? And you have to make that calculation for the time in your life, kind of what you've talked about. I think a lot of women, especially young moms, go through that. Maybe I want to do that, but I'd kind of like to be at the baseball game too, But I think you're right. Now we live in a place where you can do both, right? You can be a part of it. If you're willing to take the risk, I guess.
I'd also say having the capability of speaking up when you feel like something is unjust or wrong is something that all of us should be doing, whether you're a man or a woman. Being able to speak up and share your opinion on something without being super judged for it.
I have one. I know I'm not a panelist, but I think there's the risk and a negative connotation to being emotional for a woman. Like, oh God, I don't want them to think I'm like crazy. But how come it's not just passionate, right? Like, yeah, I feel strongly about this. Now, I'm not like going to burst out into tears in every meeting, like crying because I don't get my way, but reframing that as, no, I'm just passionate about this. I'm not pounding my fists and like a wild animal. But, for a woman to be able to express your opinion and have some emotion behind it without that being like, oh God, she's really unhinged. Because maybe I am a little unhinged in all the right ways. I have my question I want to ask, because I love this one. We talked about superpowers, and I think that is a little bit of a gift. But what is the last gift that you have given? You can say given or received, we don't care. But that you have given to someone or someone has given you.
My mom is kind of weird a little bit.
They all are.
She loves to give socks at like Thanksgiving and Christmas, and it's usually the theme of whatever her gift is. So we get lots of Easter socks and cat socks, and I tend to wear them to the office quite a bit too.
I can answer them both, actually. I'm a big fan of peanut butter. I got 50 peanut butter cups from my mother-in-law for my 50th birthday. That was an interesting gift. But as far as giving a gift, my daughter and I went to a Cavs game a couple of weeks ago in Cleveland, so I had a good time with that.
Oh, that's great.
Not the last gift I gave, but the next gift I'm giving. I'm going to visit some friends next week who live in Charleston, and I haven't seen them for 25 years, and they're same name. She's also called Alison, and I brought a little care package from France with all kinds of like little French bits and bobs and bottle of wine, and so I'm really looking forward to giving her that.
I'm trying to think. I'm going back to the holidays. I think it's the last time there was gift giving. So I have a group of girlfriends that we give each other every year like a little bundle of our favorite things. And my one friend is going through a divorce right now, and she called me last week, and she's sort of telling me all the things that are sort of wrong. And she's like, by the way, that body oil you got me for Christmas is amazing. So I was glad to bring a little bit of comfort to her. So that's what I think of when you asked about gifts.
I have one final one.
Yeah,
Me,
we have to,
Chelsea?
a couple.
You got a couple?
Go ahead,
Okay, good.
Keep going.
How many languages can you say hello in?
I think
I'm
Allison's
looking at you,
gonna-
Allison.
That's kind of unfair, I'm thinking.
Start going.
Hello, bonjour, bom dia, ciao, hola, guten tag. And I can say it in Japanese, but I've forgotten it. But Konnichiwa, gracias.
8. Wow, that's impressive.
Brian, can you top that?
I can't. No. I know you're surprised.
Have you ever experienced imposter syndrome, and if you did, how did you work through that?
I'll go. I had never experienced it until last year. And so I didn't understand how people struggled with it, quite frankly, until it happened to me. And it was because obviously I'm in a new role, and I was at a conference, and this person was speaking before me, before I was going to go up, and they killed it. I mean, the crowd was laughing, all their slides went really well, and I think I had a panic attack. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not a communications professional. What am I thinking? And it was almost paralyzing. And I got up, and I'm sure I did fine, and nobody walked out, so I'm sure it was okay. But I walked out, and I remember thinking, this is what imposter syndrome feels like. And I didn't quite know what to do with it, and so I sort of sat for a little bit, and then I went to 2 colleagues who were with me, and I told them, and they were like, you have imposter syndrome? And I'm like, I don't know that I can do this, I'm not really sure. And they were amazed that I had it. And then finally, he looked at me and he said, why are you comparing yourself? You've been in this role for 3 months to someone who's been doing it for 20 years. And that, I was like, oh, yeah, that makes more sense. Let's go get a drink. But it is crazy how it can come on you very quickly. So what I would say, look who you're comparing yourself to. Is it a fair comparison? And if it's not a fair comparison, let it go. But if it is a fair comparison, then maybe think about, do you need to do your homework on something? Because maybe it's underlying something else that's going on.
Thank you. I haven't really, but when I first started in this role 13 years ago, and I was speaking in front of our board and council, and I don't know, is that nerves or is that just imposter syndrome? But one thing as a takeaway is this is a nice industry, and people are there to support you and to listen to you. And I think if we all remember that, it's that support that we get from the highest level.
I'm not sure if there's any other multi-generational companies in here, but I think that's the biggest hurdle that I had to overcome is you are not your parents, you're not your aunt, you are yourself individually. And it's hard when this industry is so tight-knit that a lot of people knew your parents. So it's hard getting out of that mindset, and you are not your dad, you're not your mom, you are your own individual. And it's taken me a long time to realize that. And I finally just had that light bulb a few years ago when we took over the company that we don't have to run the same way that our parents did, that we are making our own imprint in the generation.
I would just say maybe similar theme. I have a little bit of a fear of public speaking, so every time I get up here or at our Hall of Fame up there speaking, I just wonder whether am I really supposed to be up here? So, and again, it's just we talked about fear and just overcoming that fear, and that reward is always on the other end. So,
While you're passing the mic, I got advice from somebody because I don't do good public speaking either. I'm actually an introvert, which is fun. But they always tell me, as my wife actually, she said, don't take criticism from someone you want to take advice from. And that just goes to my brain that if somebody says if I don't do a good job, it's like, well, that's fine. I'll still do it.
Do you have a personal mantra?
I just go back to one of my favorite quotes. Again, it brings fear into this, but face your fear, live your dreams. I always thought that was a really good quote. I've had that on my wall up in my office, but just something that I think says it all and that I try to follow.
I think if anything, it's every day is a new start.
Mine is, I got it from my grandpa, you have to learn something new every single day.
I don't know that I have a mantra per se, but the same sort of thing we've talked about our family. And my father said, you're going to work a really long time. Enjoy what you do. And so I always think about that. Like, am I enjoying what I'm working on? It can be hard, that's okay. But am I enjoying it? I think that's what I keep going through my brain.
Go ahead, close it down, Bridget. I think that's
Well, I think that's it. Thank you guys so much for coming. I think this was wonderful. Everyone will be here to chat. And then I believe they'll be serving cocktails soon. We've mentioned the cocktails several times, but I think there is cocktails.
Yeah, and
Thank you
remember, womeninpropane.org, mentorship, knowledge exchange. Jennifer does disc training. I'll plug her. I've looked at her a few times. I think she's been waiting for me to talk about it. Take advantage of everything the Women in Propane Council is offering. I'm fortunate enough to be part of those meetings, and it's incredible what they do. So go to that website. There's so many resources out there. This is stuff that's only going to build you up in your career. And like they said, if you're having fun right now in this industry, why not make it even more fun? So thanks, everybody, for joining us.